Soccer guy is back, and I'm ready to crush this, man. We're going to be discussing today my U.S. Soccer mandate. We're going to part 2, which I'm going to highlight in a second, and this is going to be focused about coaching education. I did a video similar before to this. I'm repeating it because there was a bunch of issues with the feed, so I'm showing it to you again. And if you find value from this, and you're a coach, or you want to get into coaching, so maybe you're a parent want to get into coaching, please share this with somebody, right? And this is information that I have as a guy that's been in grassroots for 10 years. I've worked with kids as young as 2, all the way up to professional players, and I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on coaching and coaching education as somebody in grassroots for 10 years with a range of experience, running my own organization, as a director of an organization, as a coordinator of an organization, coaching at various organizations in the Florida area, and just giving insight into what the life looks like as a grassroots coach, okay, and things that we can do to implement to help those type of people. And I hope to really shortcut your problems. Like, I want you to learn from my mistakes, the scars that I got, the pain that I had to go through. And nobody really taught me anything that I'm going to share with you. I figured this out over years of doing it on the day-to-day through my own experience. And I've come to like a point where I feel like I've found solutions, and I feel comfortable to share it with the country, so to speak, to help people make better decisions when it comes to grassroots. Now, let's quickly define grassroots. Grassroots for me is anything that is not the badge organizations that are like selling exposure. So by selling like MLS Next, ECNL, EA, all these leagues that are like promoting exposure, that's not grassroots. At least for me, it's not. So at least give you that definition. So grassroots is like anything that's like small, local league, smaller organizations. And that's what I'm talking about, like grassroots. So you're coaching lower level. Okay, so this is the mandate. This is part 2. So last time I talked about the playing formats. Okay, and again, this is the 5 immediate and impactful changes to grow the game in the right way and meet the players, so our American player, at their level after the 2026 World Cup. So FIFA Men's World Cup. We're at step 2 or part 2, and we want to improve coaching education, which is geared or centered around the thesis of our country, which is pay to play. Okay, that's what we're going to be looking at today. So coaching education. We're going to be looking at, discussing, evaluating, bringing ideas for this, designed to educate American soccer coaches for the environment of pay to play America. This is where club soccer, your local travel leagues, recreational, it all ties together. So if you're a rec coach, you're a grassroots coach that has a U.S. Soccer grassroots license, or you have a D license or a C license, I feel like this is really going to help you. Even if you have a B or an A, maybe because those aren't designed for grassroots, this is all about grassroots. Okay? While delivering training sessions for the average American soccer player in grassroots. So when I talk about the average American soccer player, I'm talking about somebody that has limited game experience, so they haven't played a lot. They have lower level of skill. They also have maybe watched 1 to maybe 20 professional games. So like soccer is not their main sport. Maybe they love the game, but they don't love the game, right? They don't make it their life. Okay, they maybe enjoy the game, but that's what we're looking at here when we talk about the average American soccer player. So quickly, I want to give you a story. I want to talk about my experience doing grassroots D and C licenses through U.S. Soccer. So my grassroots license was the E license. I did the D license and the C license. After I did the D license, I walked out of there going, man, I will never touch a U.S. Soccer license again. And I felt for me that there wasn't a lot of value in it. I don't feel like I learned a lot. And at the time, it was play, practice, play. And I'm just sharing my experience going through it. You may think U.S. Soccer licenses was awesome. You may think it was terrible. That's, everybody is going to have their own opinion based on the experience that they go through. Now, I've heard they made some changes which sound like they're positive in the right direction, but I can only talk about what I've gone through. Okay? E-license was all about writing on the piece of paper. So they gave us sheets of paper. They said you need to fill out your sessions in these 4 formats. If you don't follow it correctly, you'll fail. Okay? D-license, play, practice, play. Same type of thing. Here's how you structure the training session on the piece of paper. And I'm like, okay, great. So I've learned now how to write on a piece of paper. Awesome. How do I run a training session? Now, I had an idea, at least I thought I had an idea how to run training sessions that I have adapted, modified, improved throughout my time going through this journey over 10 years. Okay, and then obviously I have the C license as well that I went through, and what I found from the C license was that was like gearing coaches for a path to like the professional game or a higher level of game. So like MLS Academy, college, pro, something in between those levels. That's what the C is gearing you towards. So that doesn't really impact grassroots. So what I found lacking was, from going through this, and I'll start with this part right here, I found that it doesn't prepare coaches for the realities of U.S. youth soccer and specifically pay to play. Because you have to remember, not every other country, but the majority of countries are not pay to play. The United States is pay to play. This means you're going to have a way different experience as a coach. And I've even talked to international coaches that have left, say, Europe or South America to come here, and they've learned an incredible amount because it's a completely different environment. And it's not the same as a European country. Okay? So just understand that. So if we tie this all together, I'm walking out of these classes and I'm going, okay, I know how to write on a piece of paper. I know how to structure my session on the piece of paper. I still don't know what U.S. Soccer wants as a coach. So I've never seen, outside of a 15-minute window in the D license and a 15-minute window in the C license, what a U.S. Soccer coach is supposed to look like. I don't know what does U.S. Soccer want our coaches to look like from a grassroots perspective, a D license perspective, a C license perspective. Yes, they say this is play, practice, play. This is how you do this and this. Okay, fine. But I want to see, because I have to pass their course, and so do you if you take it, of what does a U.S. Soccer grassroots or D or C license look like? And giving full sessions so we can watch somebody in a better position than us allows us to reflect. And it's funny because somebody asked me once, Kyle, if you could spend $80,000 to spend a year with Jurgen Klopp, for example, the current manager of Liverpool, would you do it? And I'm like, duh. That's an absolutely no-brainer. Jurgen Klopp is one of the best coaches in the world. I think he's one of the top three, if not the top right now, in my opinion. But that's a no-brainer. That's how much value I think I could get from him. I would easily spend it. It wouldn't even be like, there's no hesitation. I would go spend that. And like, I think for coaches, one of the best things you can do is learn from people in better positions than you. So by having a full session and you're watching our top coaches in the country running a session for grassroots, the D and the C license, I think would significantly help frame the perspective. And then also you understand what is required of you to pass, because at the end of the day, you're in these classes to pass, by the way. Okay, so just know that. Now, getting into the nitty-gritty of this, some additional examples that I feel like U.S. Soccer has not done a good job on, just through my experience. They don't show you how you should coach under their methodology, like I just explained, or how to run the session. They don't. Okay? They don't teach the technique. So by technique is they don't want you going out and correcting technical movements of a player. So how to correctly pass, how to correctly dribble, how do you work on skill. Like that was never taught through any of the licenses at all. It was skipped completely. Okay? I've already mentioned the E and D license were about how to write on a piece of paper. The field sizes are unrealistic for a pay-to-play coach. And by unrealistic, I mean, well, you're going to have to deal with an eighth of the field. So like I go out and run training sessions for like U9, U10, U11, whatever age group. And a lot of times I have maybe a 30-yard box, right? And that's it. So like I'm not running a 7v7 game. I'm not running a 9v9 game. Well, the D license, when I took it, it was play, practice, play. The first play is 3v3 and 4v4. I can probably figure that out. The practice, we needed about at least a third of the field on average for our sessions. That's unrealistic. Okay. And then the final part was play, the final play, which was 7v7. I'm not getting that amount of space to play 7v7 with the level of skill that I had. Okay. So it's just not going to happen. Most coaches in pay to play are going to have like an eighth of a field, maybe a fourth of a field if you're lucky, but almost nobody's getting a half of a field. And then this is probably, arguably, the biggest point here. And this is dealing with pay-to-play America, parents, players, etc. So what that means is, I've had in my journey as a grassroots coach, so to speak, I've on 3 occasions had parents come up to me and tell me, Kyle, F you. Now, it was way more graphic than that, but it happens. Well, how do you deal with that? I didn't know. Now I know how I would deal with it. But I didn't know how to do it at the time when it hit me. Like when they're coming up to me screaming F you for this or for that. Like it's just, that's part of the business. And you got to deal with things like parents deciding not to bring their kid to practice because of whatever reason. Or parents getting upset because their kid loses. I mean, there's a variety of things that we could even discuss when it comes to just dealing with parents. How do you run a parents meeting? How do you deal with parents that are calling you at 10 o'clock at night? Right? There's so many little things that go into this that it's crazy. And then let's look at players, right? How do you deal with kids that have no level? And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm just highlighting, how do you deal with kids that literally cannot dribble, they cannot pass, and they do not know how to correctly receive the ball because they just don't have enough what I call core skill. So you have to figure out how to do all of this. And I feel like the licensing so far, at least from my experience, hasn't taught any of it. Okay. And I want to address some of those things in this video and audio here. Okay. So I think some of the biggest coaching changes that need to happen is this. Okay. And then I got one more story for you before I get into it. So I was recently hired by an organization to help with coaching education. And I gave the organization a curriculum. And I said, hey, this is what the organization wants you to follow as a coach. It was very basic in nature. And many of the coaches, at least when I would go out and do evaluations, would run the curriculum. I'm like, cool. And then I would do individual meetings with them afterwards. And I'd be like, okay, so I watched you run the session based on the curriculum. That's fantastic. What was your desired outcome? And they're like, I don't know, or I don't have one. What does that mean? Okay. And I'm like, well, your desired outcome is what are you trying to get from the practice? Or they would give me like, well, in this activity, I was looking for this. In this activity, I was looking for this. I'm like, okay, well, the desired outcome is what we want from the entire practice. They're like, okay, so they didn't have, and these are guys that had grassroots and D licenses, maybe even one or two had a C license. So they were struggling to like implement and understand why they're running sessions. They didn't know. And it's like, okay, well, clearly, if this is an organization with about 600 kids, probably a lot of other places have the same problem. And I'm hoping to address a lot of those issues here. Okay. So with the changes in coaching education, I would look for this. Create coaching education that is actually relatable to the environment of pay to play. So step one, show you how we want to run sessions. So what does a training session look like or should look like from our curriculum, for example, in the pay to play environment? Step two, how to deal with parents. That's important. You need to know how to deal with that or deal with them. How to run sessions for the average American soccer player, aka the curriculum. How to teach technical actions. So how to teach passing, how to teach dribbling or whatever. It could be anything and everything because there's 104 technical elements that need to be taught at least over a span of a couple of years. How to run and prepare training sessions. Well, first, you need to prepare your session, and then two, you have to run your session. How do you do that? Most people don't know because a lot of times what happens is, and let's be honest, as coaches, I've done this before too, you'll just walk up to a field in about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, you put something together in your head. Well, that's not high-level coaching. You need to actually prepare your practice and then present your practice at the training session. Okay? How to adapt when you have 10 players on a team, but 5 show up. You know how many times that I've planned a practice for, let's say, 12 players and then I get 6? You know how hard that is? And I have a team communication app where they can schedule or put their availability and then they'll either not put it or they will put it and then they don't show up or they just don't do anything. And it's like, that's frustrating. And how do you deal with that? Well, now I've done that where I create my sessions and then I have a backup plan just in case that happens, which it happens more often than not. Okay? How to do administrative work. This is something that's not talked about at all. For example, when you sign up to be a coach and an organization hires you, you typically have to do the heads-up concussion, you have to do a background check, and you also have to do Safe Sport. Well, at least 2 of the 3, Safe Sport and the heads-up concussion, that's a decent amount of time. I mean, just the Safe Sport is going to be at least 2 hours. The heads-up concussion's 30 minutes. So, and then anything else your organization, the club needs you to go through based on whatever U.S. Soccer or the state governing body or U.S. Club Soccer or whatever needs you to go through. There could be more things. Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff that you may have to learn how to do. Okay, how to find an app that works for the team, parent, and coach. So I've used a variety of apps. I personally think the best one is WhatsApp. The only issue with WhatsApp is they don't have a scheduler. But like we've used TeamSnap, Spawn, Band. It's all similar in what they offer and what they do. Okay. Educate to stop joystick, yelling, screaming, coaching. And the reason why I bring this up is screaming, joysticking, or yelling at games, contrary to popular belief, that is not coaching. We're going to talk about that more shortly. Okay? And then with the previous changes found with the playing formats, so instead of being 77 and 99, we go smaller. We can move kick and run, or what I call kickball, to the back end, or the back burner, which means we try and get rid of it, and focus on keeping the ball on the floor. Because, dude, you know how many times I've gone out and watched games at 77 at various tournaments around just the state of Florida? And it's like, man, if I had to put a realistic number, 80% of the games, the ball's in the air more than it's on the ground, because either the goalkeeper's getting it and he's punting it, or the goalie's giving it to a defender and he's slamming it, because in 77, we still have this build-out line, which is absurd. So what do most teams do with the build-out line? They put 3 defenders on it. The second the defenders are allowed to be released, they sprint at him, and that kid feels like it's a hot potato. He's got to get rid of it, so he slams it. And or the coach is saying, kick it, boot it, send it, smash it, clear it. Pick your verbiage. Okay, so just be mindful of these things. These are things that need to change for grassroots. And I just want to highlight quickly again, I'm talking about grassroots. I'm not talking about MLS Next or ECNL or GA or EA or any of these other leagues. I'm talking about none of those leagues. I'm talking about the exposure leagues or the FOMO leagues, whatever word you want to use to describe it, or badges. That's what I call it, really. So continuing. Coaching isn't joysticking or screaming at game day. And then I have like a prompt and a question here. Is coaching, and which one of the 3, and it could be multiple, are coaching? So the first part, question, correcting processes, not outcome. So I have an example. There was a player that we went to a tournament with. It was a 2015 game. This kid's a 2016. He was playing striker. He's in the middle of a game. He gets played the ball, the ball is played to him. If he takes a good touch, one-on-one with the goalkeeper. He takes a poor touch, and, he's probably 15, 20 yards from goal. We're talking, an 8, 7-year-old. Takes a poor touch to the right. He then tries to shoot versus correcting and then getting closer, and he misses the shot, right? Most people would scream at this kid and be like, why did you do that? Right? Whereas I waited till the water break. The water break came 3 minutes later, whatever it was. I walk over to him, and I'm like, okay, let's look at this. I'm like, do you remember when that mistake happened with that thing? He's like, yes. I'm like, okay, look at this. And I said, if you took your touch here, you would have been one-on-one with the keeper. He's like, yes. I'm like, okay, well then what you could have done is push the ball forward and then shoot. So you attract his pressure, or you attract pressure from the goalkeeper and then finish. So I wanted to correct the process, not the outcome. Okay. Now step 2, getting players to think. Luka example. So in the same game, actually, or was it the same? I think it was the same game. Same game, we had a kid playing center midfield in 77. Every time it was a goal kick, he would always go to the left. Nobody told him to do that, by the way, but it was a good idea for him to always slide left. That way we could try and build the ball out. What happened was their right winger would step up to him. So when it came to halftime, I had enough time to pull him aside and try and explain to him and show him on a board how we could get him to switch. So I said, hey, try to go to the right. You keep coming to the left. They're marking you with the winger. Go to the right and see what happens. So he didn't do it the first time. I had to give him a reminder. So like the ball would go out of bounds and I'd be like, Luka, remember, right. And then boom. After the second time, he remembered and then he went to the other side. Well, the other winger wasn't tracking him, so he was wide open to receive the ball. Now we had other issues with that, and not about him, but they weren't passing the ball at that point because they couldn't find him because they didn't see him, the teammates. But that's just the point, right? So that's the second way that I got the player to think. Okay? Third, screaming or joysticking. Run, kick it, boot it, send it, smash it, right? This is the screaming, the joysticking. Which one of the 3, or it could be multiple, is coaching? Okay? Give you a second to think about it, but you got 3 options. Although I held up 4 fingers. You got 3 options, and it could be 1, it could be 2, it could be all 3. That could be correct. So I'll give you a second. But these are the 3 examples. Correcting processes, not outcome. Getting players to think, screaming, or joysticking. So drum roll, please. Ba-ba-ba-ba-bum. The answer is 1 and 2. At least for me, it's 1 and 2. Okay, where you're correcting, or I was correcting the process, not the outcome. And then I was trying to get players to think without giving them always the direct answer. But how can they create a solution in a game? So stuff to think about when it comes to coaching education. Now, personally, I have had to learn how to do this over years, and it's about 10 years actually. I'm coming up on my 10th year now, and not really being taught by someone how to run or manage a training session. And basically, I just did this through experience. So, I finished my playing career. I came out into 2016, enter of 2017, and I started coaching. And nobody taught me. Nobody taught me anything. I had to figure this out on my own. I mean, there was a couple of people that I could bounce ideas off of, but they didn't give me the roadmap. So I figured this out over 10 years. And then 2 years ago, I was like, okay, let me see if I can transmit what I do to other people. So then I started with my own organization. We started putting the ideas out there. Coaches were receptive to it because like, hey, I didn't know any of this. And I'm like, you didn't know any of this. Okay, me either. That's interesting. So I kept finding that the people that we were bringing into our organization had no idea as well. And these were guys that had decent playing careers, had the grassroots, the D, the C license, maybe even an A license. And it's all about framing it back to the kids that are in grassroots. And so we're looking at this and I'm going, I've never been taught. A lot of other people haven't been taught. Ben. And a lot of other people haven't been taught. How do we fix this problem? Venka, come here. How do we fix this problem? Because what's happening is we're having a bigger problem, and it's not just one person or two people. It's a variety of people that are struggling with this. So I just did this and found the best practices over 10 years of doing this over and over again. And it's literally nonstop. It's become a significant problem. And with time, I've been able to piece it all together, and I've started figuring out how to manage this and put it in a way to create a platform that allows people to skip the pain and whatnot that I've gone through. But what I want you to think about here now with coaching education is we need to meet players at their level. And this is probably the most important piece, like the biggest takeaway from this that you need to have. So 10 years of doing this, I have found that the key thing is, like I just said, meet players at their level. Well, most coaches are going to be coaching kids that don't have high level. They don't have a lot of skill. They have low, medium, maybe high interest in the game, but they're just not great players yet. They need to be developed. So I've created, and this is where I was talking about 2 years ago, my age development curriculum. And it's focused on 4 things here. Okay. First part is technical activation. This is like a kid and a ball. Okay. Step 2 would be coordination. And 1 and 2 could go hand in hand with each other, by the way. So you can actually tie them together to make it just one instead of separate. It can be together or separate. So coordination is like basic body mechanics, how to run correctly, things like that. Next step is small-sided games, which is targeted practice. So this would be like 1v1, 2v1. And you're trying to get players to get practice at whatever the focus of the session is, which I'll talk about in a second. Then we have competitive play. And I used to just call it play, but then I'm like, when I call it play, I don't really get what I'm looking for out of it. So let's make it competitive play because I want the kids to compete. So now with competitive play, we're focusing on small-sided stuff like 1v1 to 5v5, and it's competition. So by competition, I'll use this as the example. Winner stays on. So we create the framework, the dynamics, and it's winner stays on. Whoever wins stays on, and that's now it's competitive. Now, to get to this part, we have to define our desired outcome. Like I mentioned previously, the desired outcome is what I want to achieve from the session. Not just a specific part of the practice. What do I want to achieve from the session? Right? So the entire practice, what do I want to achieve? Okay? Then I can create my coaching points. So coaching points are what I'm going to be explaining to the kids. So these are like the little interactions, like very quick example I just thought of on the top of my head. If I'm working on attacking 1v1 to goal, just very quickly, that's my desired outcome. We want to improve the players attacking 1v1 to goal because it's U9. Okay. My coaching points, the 3 things I would use would be direct, use speed, and use a skill. Okay, so direct, go at the opponent. Speed, we need to accelerate and decelerate, so change our speed. And then final one, skill. Well, I need to have the appropriate distance to use whatever skill I'm using. I need to sell the skill, and then I need to get out. Okay, and that's what I would be focused on. And that would help me get to my desired outcome. Okay, and then once I have these 2, I then can design the activities and exercises for the session, which would come into this part. So now that's just the main idea or philosophy that I have. I try to go with this first, then my coaching point second, and then I can go build this and design my activities. And by doing that, I have found a framework that works. Now, sometimes I will build the session first and then do this backwards, but 90% of the time I'll do it this way, and I find that I create better activities by doing that, but sometimes you get an idea that comes in your head. So those are just things that I've been able to do. And again, remember, meet players at their level. It doesn't have to be complex. It can be very basic in nature. That is okay because we're dealing with average American soccer players. So a lot of good stuff to think about, right? And so like I said, 10 years of me doing this, nobody mentored me, nobody coached me, nobody helped me. I had to figure this out all on my own. I have years of pain, scars, just poor experience because I didn't know any better. And now I've gotten to this point where I feel like I can help the next generation of coaches that, want to improve their experience and their players' experience, more importantly, in grassroots and meeting the kids at their level. So how have I done this? I have created so far the 3% Coach Blueprint, and it's educational pieces. So using the 3% Coach Blueprint, this is an online course that for me is designed for coaches that have or are like in between the grassroots. So it can be a recreational coach, competitive coach in grassroots, taking the grassroots license, a D license, or even a C license. I feel like it meets everything in between that. Okay, and it's a virtual course, so it's virtual, and it's due on your own, so you complete on your own time. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback from it, but where I'm trying to go with this is, this can be your shortcut. You don't need to take 10 years to get to the point where I got to. You can shortcut that and do it you can get the information and do it in 3 days, 2 days, depending how quick you want to go through it. But it's fantastic content. And then we have another one coming shortly called the 1% Coach Blueprint. And this would be the level above that. That would be closer to like D and C specifically, if we're talking about U.S. soccer licensing. And that way, we're getting you more information when it comes to being a grassroots coach. And that way we're filling in the blanks, I feel like, and I'm so passionate about this because I think it's so important and it's so critical. And all the feedback that I've been getting from people that have taken it already are like, this is the missing link. This fills the gap where U.S. soccer has failed. In fact, I'm going to read you a message verbatim that I just got today from somebody who took it. You guys are going to find this probably very interesting. Give me 1 second right here. So he says, a guy named Graham sent me this today. After going through the Beast 3%, so this one, Coach's Blueprint, I definitely found concise, useful information. I have been coaching in and around pay-to-play U.S. soccer for over a decade, so he has 10 years of experience like me, and currently taking the U.S. Soccer D license course. And the specifics that Kyle touches on and organizes in short videos are so much better than the U.S. Soccer course. Kyle's program is a true blueprint that outlines those specifics to coach in the U.S. system in a very down-to-earth approach that can be immediately implemented to improve the player anyone is working with. I also found the 1v1 and 2v2 session full of useful details and provide clear, deliberate training for grassroots players. Thanks, bro, for this course. I look forward to future content. He then added, the D license, because he's currently in it, is so-so. I just see holes in it, but your blueprint fills those. Unfortunately, there has been little time to engage with the instructor and other coaches. However, first in person is this weekend, so on and so forth. And I think that gives me a lot of valuable information because it says, hey, this is a guy that has 10 years of experience like me. I guess I was lucky in the sense of I was able to find ways to piece this together, and I've been in grassroots for so long that I started, finding little things that I could work through this. And I'm like, okay, how can I help other people? So like I said, 2 years ago, I found it. I started using it with my own staff, using the age development curriculum. And then I said, they're loving this. Maybe I can help more people. And that's what this entire thing is, the 3% Coach Blueprint. So if you want more information, shoot me a DM that says 3%, and I can help you figure it out. We can work our way there. Okay? Without further ado, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for tuning in.